Hey, what's going on? This is the OG Kickoff, a Double Down to Next Round media production. I'm Connor O'Gara. Will, we are back. Fall camp is back. It's good to see you, man.
It's great to see you too, man. It's good to see your face in place, your feet in the seat. We just did an interview with Brad where I was like, what is StreamYard? It's been so long.
No, yeah. So we did the Adjustment More, which everybody should go back and listen to. 2022 Alabama, Tennessee. We did that before SEC Media Days because I was on vacation last week. Little solo trip with Claire. We got to see my mom's lake house, which I've been to before. She had never been to, so it was really, really fun and enjoyable. But it did kind of feel like the last week of summer. And now we're in mid-season form because we got camps opening up everywhere. We're very soon going to be going to 2 pods a week, by the way. That's coming up in 2 weeks. So we're looking at like the latter half of August, essentially, is when we're going to make that transition back to 2 pods per week. We'll let everybody know what that schedule is going to be looking like. But yeah, man, it is a wonderful time of year. Do you agree or disagree that August is the slowest month of the year because you're just waiting for games to start?
Yeah, I'm actually lining up to go to the protests with my torch and pitchfork against the LA Dodgers. I think that's the biggest thing that's going on in sports right now. I think that hating the LA Dodgers is all there is in the sports calendar currently. No, but I'm right there, man. I feel like maybe I'm too in on the coach speak where they say like we're ready to hit people in different jerseys and everything. Like I smell the grass in Tiger Stadium for week 1.
Scooble's not even that good. Just go ask the Cubs about that. Just saying.
There you go.
Great pod lined up. Brad Crawford, our guy, he's coming up in a little bit. We're going to talk about his preseason top 25. I yell at him for ranking teams based on strength of schedule. We get into it. I've been having that debate with Brad for like 11 years, so that's nothing new. And then some South Carolina stuff as well. And then we're going to close with Lad of the Week and an email that we got from our guy Tyler. So stick around for that. But first, Will, it is basically the start of the season, the start of fall camp, but our last draft of the year. We have to do it. We are going to do something that is prediction based. We always kind of like to do that with our last draft of the year. And we couldn't just repeat what we did last year with drafting SEC teams, which we did with former coworker Adam Spencer. And we can't do that because I beat you guys so badly that it made me think I was Bama and you were Mercer.
Okay, that feels unnecessary. Can't even be Auburn. You got to be. Okay.
No. You wish you were Auburn. Come on, buddy. 4 playoff teams and a 10-2 team that missed the playoff. They were my 5. Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Vandy. That 5, that's never going to be repeated ever again, ever. So I'm walking off into the sunset. That iteration of the draft that has been print the shirts, championship plaque, all that stuff. I need a new challenge. That was too easy for me. We can't do it anymore.
Okay, fine. You know what? I'm ready now. He's gotten off the lakes of Wisconsin. You were in Wisconsin?
Yes, had some Culvers. I had Culvers, so I teased it all week. Culvers, welcome to Delicious. I had Culvers within 5 minutes of being in Wisconsin. We flew into the Appleton airport, which is like the smallest airport that I've ever been to. And my mom's fiance picks us up to make the 2-hour drive up to Ellison Bay, Door County, if you know, you know. And immediately, fish sandwich in hand, cheese curds for the car, kids meal for Claire. We were ready to go, man. The fish sandwich is so good. I'm not kidding. Like, call it a fast casual fish sandwich. It is so unbelievably good. I had more fish and cheese in that state than one human being should eat, probably. I don't even care. It was great. No, I'm a man of my word. Of course, I lived up to it.
Yes, I feel like fish and cheese is in Chicago. Anyway,
you're
not
like together, but separate, you know?
Yeah, this is the closest to Oro you're gonna get, right? Shout Ryan Silverfield. Like you got a little bit of the tan going, you're full of fish and cheese, you're coming off the Wisconsin beach. I'm ready to go. Let's get after a draft, man.
All right, so here's what we're doing today. We are drafting teams for the playoff and national championship. And this is how this is going to work, okay? So we're doing this very straightforward. We're not going to come up with like some crazy scoring system or anything like that. I don't want to confuse the people. We're each drafting 5 teams for the playoff, and you get 1 point for making the playoff and 1 point for each round that one of your teams advances after that. Okay. So that's a way to basically saying like, hey, if you get a team that earns a first round bye, you get rewarded for that. All right. So that way you're not like getting a raw deal if you select a team that like gets a bye and then they lose in their first game. No, like you should get a point for that in this system. So last year, for example, if you had drafted Georgia, who made the playoff, got a bye, and then lost.
Speaking of the teams that can't get out of the bye week.
Yeah, right. You would have gotten 2 points from them, right? Because you get a point for them making the playoff, and then you get a point for them advancing past the first round. So a team like A&M, who made the playoff but then lost in round 1, would have gotten you 1 point. The most points that you can possibly get from a team is 5 points. Okay, IU would have gotten you 5 points last year by virtue of the national champion will get you 5 points. By doing it this way, it won't just be, hey, did you pick the right national champ? Which I always talk about that with like March Madness pools and stuff. I hate it when you join a March Madness pool and then you're like, oh, great. There's 32 points if you pick the right national champion and 1 point for a first round game. This is fun. But this basically allows us to have a true draft, and depth is probably going to matter. I would tend to think that if you're hitting on like at least 3 of your playoff teams, then you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. But odds are that one of us will pick with these 10 teams the future national champ. Though if we were doing this last year, like if we were doing this last year, we would have. You know, like it's possible. Maybe that's the era that we're in, where a team like IU could just pop up and win a national championship, and we're going to look really dumb with our predictions. Does that make sense? Would you like any sort of corrections to that system?
No, this seems really straightforward. Yeah.
And this was, by the way, Will's idea, because Will was like, look, I can't do the same thing we did last year. No. I had actually
these scoring systems. That's how he gets me. He gets to write the rules. It's all smoke and mirrors, folks.
Yeah, last year we just did based on wins. Crazy scoring system worked out for me.
None of that fake news wins metric, okay? We're doing championships or bust here.
Yeah, could we do success rate? Could we do that? No.
Pass block win rate? Anyway.
Yeah. Let's ask the favorite question. Will, first pick or second two? What do you want?
Okay, I got a clear A tier of 3 teams, so I'm certainly going last, or I'm going second here.
Okay. I'm good with that. I'm actually good with that. I think you're going to take my 2 and 3. I will take my 1. I'm going to be a man of my word. Give me the Oregon Ducks. First pick. Okay? I probably could have gotten them on the other side of this, but I have to be true to this. I am begging AP voters not to have Oregon as the preseason number 1 when the coaches poll came out, and I was like, ooh, good. Oregon's not number 1. Maybe that's going to work out pretty well. A lot of teams got first place votes in that. But I do think that if all of a sudden they were number 1 in the AP poll, I'd be like, can I change my pick? I, for right now, am all in on Oregon. Okay. And I was talking to our guy, JD Piquel, last week when I was on vacation, because once again, don't you know, JD and I have the same national champ. We're very like-minded individuals in that sort of way. We will die together. The biggest question mark for Oregon is replacing both coordinators. That was something that we had talked about. Like, you know, we kind of go back and forth and we're like, yeah, but you know, other teams have faced that and have had to overcome that in the past and have gotten 2 national champions. And if you have a really good head coach and a really good roster, history tells us you find a way. Okay. It is a legitimate question. I don't mean to dismiss that. It is really rare, and I'd have to really dig into the archives to find this. Finding a staff where you have a head coach and an OC and a DC who are all 40 and younger, those teams aren't usually winning national championships. Okay. So Oregon has a chance to be an outlier in that sort of way. I should do like the added age of those 3 and come up with like an age composite or something like that of like past national champs that have had, you know, those 3 coaches and how old they are. I guarantee you Oregon's would be at the lower end if they do go on to win a national championship. But, you know, I remember watching Oregon get smoked by Kirby Smart's team in Dan Lanning's debut and being there at Mercedes-Benz to kick off 2022. It was like, man, he's got a long way to go. This is going to be tough, uphill climb, maybe a bit of a rebuild for a first-time head coach. Since that game, Oregon is 48-7. Okay. Including that game, 8 total losses, 6 of which have come against teams who have gone on to play in the national championship. The last time that Oregon lost to a team that didn't reach the national championship game was November of 2022. Will, off the top of your head, do you know what team that was?
22. No, I do not. Was it Ohio State?
It was a pre-DJ Uyunglele Oregon State team. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Ben Gilbranson. There's a name for it. Damon Martinez before he went to Miami.
Yeah.
I trust Dan Lanning. I do. I also trust a schedule that has really one true game against a national championship contender, and it's at Ohio State. No Indiana in the regular season. And here's the other floor raiser. It's not an end-all be-all, but it's one of those things that if you're wondering how does this team collapse and not make the college football playoff, this is a thing that you have to look at. It's the best backup quarterback situation of any of the contenders. Okay. And I'm not 100% all in on Dylan Raiola, especially after his comments to On3, where he's
Dude,
like,
I love how every part of the Nebraska conversation has to involve Cord. He's like, he commits, he's like, yo, I love Cord. And he's like, hey, yeah, that's the thing about Oregon. It's got great scenery. It doesn't have any Cord.
Yeah, man. Look, you know what you signed up for. And Lincoln's a lovely place. You know Lincoln's a lovely place. So don't even go there. He is many things. He is also a 2-year power conference starter who, if you had to turn to him, you would feel like this guy can keep the thing afloat. And especially if you felt like he had a formidable offensive line, which I think they're going to be good enough on that in that area. They've certainly got the skill players around him to be able to make that work. So again, and that's just talking about if Dante Moore were to go down. So yeah, I think Oregon checks so many boxes. So I'm okay taking them at 1 overall, even though I think I could I have gotten them at 3?
Certainly. I mean, I like how you went in like the big time machine to imagine a time when Oregon got smoked. Connor, Oregon got smoked by your Indiana Hoosiers the last time we saw them play football.
I know. I know.
Back in the olden times against Kirby Smart. Dude, the other day I watched Pons.
We've watched this team. And Tom Luganville brought this up when he went on with our friends over here, obviously at the next round, and brought up this point of how close is Oregon to a national championship if their season has ended in such humiliating fashion each of the last 2 years. Once upon a time, we used to mock Oklahoma for getting to the semifinal and then just getting their doors beaten. Like, there is definitely a world in which Oregon is that team that is viewed as tier 1, but is actually more tier 2. And if this season ends up being disappointing, I think that's a fair takeaway. I really do. I still think they're way closer to tier 1 than tier 2. I do. And the success that they have had transitioning into the Big Ten already at a time in which everybody's looking at the Big Ten going, look, it's either the best conference or it's got a really good argument to be the best conference. And they are one of the contenders. Like, there's no doubt about it. I think that they have a really good case. And that's why I'm okay getting them at 1, even though I definitely could have gotten them at 3.
Yeah, I think the ceiling is certainly there. The floor is my question. To your point about the new coordinators, have a lot of respect for our guy, Will Stein, and the great things I think he's going to do at Kentucky. But that being said, I think they have a lot of variance, right? It could be one of these lightning in the bottle situations where we've seen time after time in college football where a new staff gets together and just gels, and then suddenly all the stories of the old staff don't matter. I could certainly see that. I do think getting to that upper crust of the Big Ten, whoever that would be, right? If it's Ohio State, if it's Michigan, if it's Indiana, pick a Big Ten team. Oregon has found a way to kind of lose to them. But I do see it. I do see the talent. I do see the depth. That being said, I had them 5th. Now you've done the
thing.
Yeah, in this exercise, not the one in title, but in this exercise, because of the floor. Now, you love doing this. It's actually such an elite strategy because I say there's 3 teams. You go off the board, and then you make me make the decision to take 2 of the 3. And then whoever I draft first is like funny. So you know what? I'll just do this in order. Oh man. Okay. I'm gonna go Notre Dame.
Yeah, you had to. I knew I wasn't gonna get Notre Dame if I didn't take him at 1 overall.
Yeah, and here's the thing about Notre Dame. I think that they are so recession-proof. We have seen a congressional edict that says this team has to make the playoffs. So at that point, the odds of them missing the playoff when we'll just have somebody come in and intervene and say, actually, 4-loss Notre Dame by the will of God, they're going to be in the
Well, it's
postseason.
minus 700. And I've seen other where it's like minus 900 or minus 1,000 for them to make the playoff, which if you don't follow gambling or like whatever, that's perfectly fine. Essentially, that it means they are the most likely team to make the college football playoff of anyone that we have seen so far. And I know they're only 3 years into the 12-team playoffs, so that is interpreted differently now than it was even just as recently as 4 years ago. Notre Dame missing the playoff would be like one of the biggest stories of the year in college football.
100%. And the funny thing is, you also have the ceiling of this coach taking them right, to the doorstep of a national title. And so that's the thing, is that even if this were a fraud Brian Kelly team, I'd be like, hey, appearance, I'll take it. But they have shown that once they get there, they can, play with anyone. And so, yeah, I think that's my caveman math on Notre Dame, that it feels like the, highest floor and a pretty high ceiling.
I agree. And look, this new stipulation of if they're a top 12 team in the playoff poll and that final playoff poll, they get a spot automatically and they don't have to worry about, like this team or that team. That's probably factoring into this. I don't know that it's going to come down to that. I think their floor is 10-2. And the conversation is this because you look at the schedule and it's really 3 games that could push them. And 3 games in which, if they're playing in a 60-minute game, you shouldn't necessarily be surprised, okay?
At North Carolina. Sorry.
I can't wait to tune into that game in Dublin and just see how much of a mess it is for UNC. Yeah. Or alternatively, Bobby Petrino just cooking, Robert Patrick in his bag, and Belichick just throwing a smirk, being like, see, Michael Lombardi, he didn't know. I knew. I had everything the whole time.
On the wrong stuff.
Everybody's pointed this out, okay? Of like the game at BYU is going to be tough. It's potentially the first top 10 game ever in Provo. You're going to have the Miami game at home and the Catholics versus Convicts rematch, whatever you want to call it. And then don't sleep on that late season game against SMU with a very capable quarterback in Kevin Jennings. And we like Rhett Lashley, but it's just a schedule that it broke so well. Will, like I wanted to look at the record of the other 7 power conference teams that they face, because they do face 10 power conference teams. And oh, by the way, an 11-win Navy team is part of it, but Navy, significant drop off with what they lost. We support the troops. But I looked at the 7 other power conference teams that they face, and the combined conference record of those teams, Will. I want you to guess this, okay? I'll give you the total of conference games that they play, like 59 conference games that we're talking about here. What do you think the record was of those other 7 power conference teams that Notre Dame will face this year?
I'm going to say they're about 10 games under 500.
Not even close.
Not even close?
Oh
my gosh. What's the number?
10-49.
Oh my.
Those teams were 10-49 in conference play last year. Okay. It's like all these teams.
There are some Big Ten teams in here, but these are not like heavy hitter conferences.
No, it's like, they open against Wisconsin. They've got like Michigan State and, they've got Purdue, and they've got all these teams that are very much either like in transition type phases, or it's like a year 1 coach that just really didn't work out, like UNC as well with the Belichick thing. So yeah, I mean, Stanford had the most wins in conference play among those other 7 with 3 conference wins. Yeah. And that's another team with a new coach. So like the schedule just broke really, really well for them. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, it's a good team. It's a team that's number 1 in the country in percentage of returning production with a capable quarterback. In theory, the most replaceable position on the field at running back, which not necessarily a given with Ionis Williams and kind of what they're going to replace Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price with, but still, you feel good about it. Even like looking at the Miami matchup against Malachi Toney with Leonard Moore, probably going to be shadowing him that whole game. You're just like, Notre Dame checks so many boxes. And if you had taken him number 1 overall, which they were number 1 on your board, correct, Will?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So like I wouldn't have been able to push back on that at all. And I only didn't take them because I wanted to stay true to my Oregon number 1 ranking.
Yeah, and that's the thing where like it's kind of like the Craver pick with the receivers. It looks weird in a graphic. People are like, this guy's number one overall Notre Dame. When you think about it, yeah, and that's the point that I was making about the power conference part of it. Is it's like, hey, not that the SEC is be all end all. I know there are Big Ten teams in here, but we're mainly talking about the ACC, like some Big 12 teams. It's not like you could bottom feed and get to about 10 games under 500. That's not what these teams have done.
Yeah, and to be clear, I mean, you had the USC cancellation, which they're going to play again starting in 2030, whether or not Lincoln
Allegedly.
Riley. Yeah, allegedly. Whether or not Lincoln Riley and Marcus Freeman will be there for that, TBD. But things broke well. It just broke really, really well with the way that it lined up this year. And Notre Dame is not going to obviously get any sort of sympathy for that. But I will say, like, if they go 10-2, I don't think it's a lock that they have a top 12 spot. We saw that last year with the way that this was something that's played out. And I realized that the rule was made in part because of that. But still, I think because of the conversation surrounding this schedule, it's considered such a light schedule that, man, the margin for error is very, very minimal. It's still an ideal spot. And if they are in that conversation at season's end, it's not going to surprise anyone. Well, who was president the last time Notre Dame won a national championship?
Reagan, right?
Amen. He was.
Hell yeah, brother. Anyway, so that being said, let me go to my next one. I've decided there's an easy answer here out of my.
Is there?
Oh, I believe so. Out of my top three, I'm going to force you to go back into the Big Ten. I'm going to go with Miami because that way, whoever wins that game is for sure making it. So I've just auto nominated one team because the odds of both of these teams missing it are, I mean, like I would go hang gliding. You know what I'm saying, of both of these teams because again, I'm looking at now we have another game at Chapel Hill. you can't discount the fighting Michael Barty's. But that being said, yeah, I mean these are games that like oh no, at Clemson, like they're versions of some of these games that could be scary. But if you look at Miami's schedule, it's really just kind of Miami beating themselves, which we've seen them do. They will do that. Like at least one of these losses they will find in here. Trust. And I've been a guy who's a little bit like wary to bet on Miami's continued success. But again, you look at the schedule, the way they've been able to dominate, the way that the conference is kind of realigned for them, the way that they play physical, hard-nosed football. It's not like they got like benefited from matchups last year. It's not like they got an easy road to the CFP. It's not like they played some high-flying team and punched them in the mouth or got lucky. No, I mean, they went through the gauntlet. And a lot of the reasons why we like that offensive line play, Mario Cristobal, don't think he's forgotten about offensive line. We hit that in our interview. The ACC can kind of handle one or maybe two good teams. And I think they have firmly planted themselves as we are currently the most talented. Now we're the most physical. We are getting the recruits. We've built a program here. And the ACC is so easy to predict in my mind when it's like that, because we've seen all these teams kind of just line up and take their lumps. So counting Notre Dame as kind of a half ACC team, I think either way, one team obviously has to win that game. It's going to be probably a top 5 matchup, even by that point, November 7th. And I think both these teams easily get in. What they do from there, they both have a history of doing it in the big stage.
You have picked the two easiest paths to the playoff. I won't push back on that for a second. I did lower Miami on my board because you have been the biggest advocate this offseason of Miami's going to find a way to puke on their shoes.
They will.
And I had this thought. This is a dumb thought, but it came across my mind. And this is perhaps just off-season brain, whatever. But when I saw Brett McMurphy report that Mario Cristobal got that extension, and I thought that extension was inevitable. Like, you go to a national championship in this day and age, you're getting a new contract. It'd be very strange if you didn't. It's par for the course, okay? My mind went to a dark place, though. I thought, surely there's no way that Miami is going to be staring at 8-4, having backups play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and having everyone wonder again if Mario Cristobal is an elite coach. Surely that can't happen. Well, I don't know why it took that inevitable development for me to go to that dark place, but it kind of did. And for all the reasons that everybody already knows, Malachi Tony, Mark Fletcher, Darian Mensah, this team is stacked to the gills with talent. Okay. And I'll even bang the drum. I still think the Miami defensive line is going to be really good. As a Ruben Bain respecter, Akeem Mesidor respecter, they're going to be just fine. Like, Justin Scott is the next guy up there. Damon Wilson the second. coming over by way of Mizzou and Georgia is going to be awesome for Jason Taylor. I have this kind of bold prediction that Corey Heatherman's going to get a head coaching job at season's end, and he's going to take Jason Taylor with him to be his DC, even though Corey Heatherman's going to call plays. I think that all those things are on the table. Okay. And I have Miami going to the college football playoff. The thought did creep into my mind. Here's the good news for you, though, and why it's not just path anymore. There are very few coaches in this sport who can say, yep, I've got 3 playoff wins. Do you know how big that list is? Well, take a guess of active coaches in the sport who have at least 3 playoff victories.
I mean, Kirby, Dabo, Ryan Day. I think that's the list. Am I missing somebody?
I mean, Cignetti last year.
Oh, Cignetti, yeah. He as of last year, yeah.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman. Like, it's 6 deep. It's 6 deep. So this thing that once, I think very fairly, hung over Mario Cristobal with the fact that he was at Oregon and Miami, this thing that hung over him, it doesn't anymore. And maybe history is going to tell us, look, that he just had that one elite team, and it was a 2025 team that kind of went on that run once it found that it was actually going to be going to the playoff and that it had jumped Notre Dame. But maybe that's kind of a microcosm for Mario's career. Like maybe he just needed that get over the hump, breakthrough type of run. And this is just going to now become the standard for him. Like that's all on the table too. So it sounds like I'm a bit all over the place with Miami. I had lowered them on my board, hoping to be able to get the value late. Like I had them at 6 on my board, even though the path is 100% there. And I like that you took them here because I already feel like I'm losing this drought.
And by the way, of course, Cignetti got his in a row, right? Like that just goes to show like how quickly things can shift. But I will say this too. This is like a storybook Disney schedule here, right? Where you get FSU at home. Okay. You go to Chapel Hill. Can't write that off. You go to South Bend. But then your next 3 games are at home. These boys had the audacity to make Duke their homecoming game this year. After stealing
I wonder
their quarterback.
when that was it. When was that announced, man? Because, that's disrespectful.
Their former coach, they stole their quarterback. Duke took their spot in the ACC championship.
And their best receiver, too.
Right. And Duke has every reason to be like, what? Like, technically, we were in the ACC championship. Technically, we built up Darian Minson. You illegally stole him. You gonna make us homecoming in front of 12,000 people? What do you mean? So that is it's not even a trap game. It's like a disrespect bowl. So they might lose 2 straight to Notre Dame and Duke because that's but it doesn't matter because again, all their other hard games are at home.
Yeah, it certainly sets up well. Again, if we are sitting here at season's end with Miami having not won the ACC once again, like it's just never going to happen. Just change conferences. Do the new thing of like the Protect College Sports that is now if you leave a conference, you have to be independent for 5 years, like before your contract is up. Just go independent. Just go back to doing that. You're just never going to win the ACC.
Oh no, don't make us go back to the Big East. No, we were terrible back there.
Right.
Yeah, but I and also they've proven that they don't even need to play in the conference championship to get in. So yeah. feels recession proof.
Okay. I am getting the team of the 2020s so far. Give me Georgia. Boring pick. It's the pick that needs to be made. The highest floor of any team in America. It's 9 consecutive years of top 7 finishes. It's 8 SEC championship appearances in the last 9 years. And as we saw last year in the 12-team playoff era, getting to the SEC championship is essentially an auto bid because Bama got in, even though it lost that game by a few touchdowns. You can question the upside of this team, which we've talked about a ton. Brad's going to talk about it as well. Do they have the dudes in the passing game? Do they have the scheme to win a national title? I also think Georgia needs more consistent pass rushing. That's kind of been the overlooked thing nationally. I know Georgia fans know about this, but like if Elijah Griffin becomes Jalen Carter 2.0, something that can happen, that changes what Georgia's pass rush looks like if all of a sudden they have this menace on the interior. But it also helps too, and I keep thinking about this with the Georgia pass rush, that KJ Bolden and Ellis Robinson IV, those guys on the back end are going to allow Georgia to kind of pin its ears back a little bit with the pass rushing. And I do think that's going to play into what they would like to do. So I think you can question if Georgia is going to win a national championship, but questioning if they're going to get to the playoff is kind of a foolish endeavor. it's just such a high floor team. I mean, Georgia suffering 3 regular season losses is such a hard thing to imagine, and it'd be different if we felt like this was one of the toughest SEC schedules. I don't think it's one of the toughest SEC schedules. I think it's more forgiving than most. So I have yet to see anyone leave Georgia out of the playoff. So to me, they are very obvious to be one of the first picks off the board here.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia is as close as we have to set it and forget it, to your point. And I probably talked about this before in the pod, but one of the most eye-opening moments for me about Georgia, I was talking to our guy, Emery, whose real name is John, and he was like, yeah, man, think about all the 10-win seasons Georgia has had. And like me as an LSU fan, it's just completely can't even get that way because LSU is either like mid or awesome, sometimes terrible. But the 10-win perpetual 10-win season is just not something most SEC fans can claim in the way that Georgia fans can. And I think that that's exactly what they're built to do right now is just basically make the playoff every year. I think that a 12-team playoff, even though Kirby has kind of struggled in these bye week games, I think that the worst Kirby Smart team is still a dang good team. And especially in an SEC that's, let's call it flat, let's call it competitive, cannibalizing. I think that, they're set to compete. So a nightmare situation for them is them chomping at the bit and having to prove themselves with their backs against the wall going into the playoff. But with Gunner returning, with I'm not going to say worst case, but I just feel like it would be hard for us to regress offensively from last year with all the weird stuff that happened. Basically, we're going to know either there's going to be radical changes with the offense or they're going to have something finally figured out. But I think either way, they're sitting at worst case scenario 9 wins and with a fighting chance to get in.
Yeah, Georgia just being sort of in the middle of the pack in the conference and all of a sudden just being 6-3 in conference play, it would have to take a real regression offensively. I mean, I'm talking like Georgia fans want Gunnar Stockton benched for that to happen. And
They're
can't
throwing
imagine
things
that.
at Mike Bobo.
Yeah, you think Bobo, the discourse on him is loud now, buddy. Wait till you see what that would look like. But again, I don't think that's the case. So picking them to be able to make the playoff and then potentially make a run, even though obviously they've gone 3 consecutive years without winning a playoff game, it still feels like a safe bet on Kirby Smart.
Come on, man. The SEC championship, that's a de facto playoff game right there, man. That's all that really matters. Anyway. No.
Some are saying. Who's your next pick?
So, okay, I could go chaos mode here. But I'm going to do the safe thing. I'm going to do the respectable thing and go Ohio State. I think they've hung out for long enough. I think that, again, what is your floor in that conference? I think that ultimately, when you talk about losable games, when you talk about the talent, I mean, would you rate Ryan Day as like a positive or a negative factor right now?
At Ohio State?
Yeah.
Positive. It's undoubtedly positive. I mean, they've been in the top 3 in the playoff poll in every season that he's been there.
Well, yeah, not the preseason, but in terms of our late season, because we've seen.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Late season was playoff poll. Like that's what we're talking about.
I see what you're saying. So, like that being said, we've seen them struggle again in the regular season, but I think that ultimately, I think that brand name is going to help them a ton. I think that even if they do lose kind of all of their losable games, they're still in a favorable position. And here I'm almost betting more on the top end that we've seen them lock in. We've seen, even with them losing the amount of talent that they did, and like the first rounders on defense and all that stuff, that offensively, they just have too many weapons to really be dead in the water, if that makes sense.
This is the first one we're going to disagree on.
Interesting. Okay.
I had Ohio State at 7th on my board. Not nearly as high because I picked Ohio State to miss the playoffs. So I don't want to just put them at 3 or 4.
Yeah, fair.
I think you've picked based on path, I think, in large part for the first 2. And this one, the path it's unbelievably treacherous. It is. There are 6 games I look at on that schedule, and I would not be surprised if they go down to the wire. Where we're tuning in like, hey, Ohio State needs to pick up a first down to be able to keep this defense off the field to try and lock up this game. Like, that's what we're talking about here. So you've got at aforementioned, well, I shouldn't say aforementioned. We're going to get to Texas in a second here, I feel like. You have that game on the road. You are at Iowa, a place where dreams go to die. Ohio State is familiar with that. At Indiana, at USC, home against Oregon, home against Michigan. If Ohio State is playing in a 60-minute game against any one of those teams, you're like, okay, yeah, kind of makes sense. Even if you feel really good about their offense, even if you feel like Matt Patricia defensively just worked wonders and is going to be every bit as good as he was last year, albeit maybe with a little bit less talent this year. I think that's fair to say. But I don't think it's crazy to say that Ohio State could split those 6 games. And they're looking at 3 losses at 9-3. And I realize like all of the positives working in their favor. And if you ask Ohio State fans, they'll tell you, you know what? Brian Hartline is the first-time play caller. Actually didn't really work out that well. And it's not really a loss that he's gone. And it's going to be an upgrade to have Arthur Smith in there because Ryan Day, to this point in his career, when he's done the, hey, NFL guy, come do these things in college, it's worked out. Not just with Matt Patricia. It worked out really well with Chip Kelly. So
that's so wild to say
I
out
get
loud,
that.
isn't it?
I mean, Ryan Day is living proof of it.
Yeah.
His college background was limited. And, Urban Meyer really liked what he was able to do with the Eagles. And there was a feeling of like, oh man, this guy came to the college game and kind of was everything Urban needed at that point in his career. And so I think that's just always kind of been something that Ryan Day has gravitated towards. But I do question a little bit of what the Arthur Smith offense is going to look like. And here's the thing that I keep wondering about. Julian Sayin in those late game moments is unproven.
Not good.
They didn't play competitive games last year. Credit to them. They had a historically great defense. They would get off to awesome starts in these games, and it was off to the races, and they were not playing competitive fourth quarters. And they essentially were kind of like a 2018 Bama with how little their starters had to be on the field in the fourth quarter. And then when they actually needed to be on the field in the fourth quarter, those Indiana game, the Miami game, you kind of saw some things that made you go, well, that looks a little bit different. And I do think that could prove to be Ohio State's downfall this year because roster-wise, like, again, top 3 team in the country preseason, absolutely. No problem with that whatsoever. Top 2, maybe? Yeah, that's perfectly fine. But I think the path is so difficult. And so, maybe you could spin it as being like, well, if they get there, they're going to be so battle-tested, which is true. And they'll already know what it's like to play in playoff or bust type games. They'll have plenty of experience. Or the flip side is that they're going to have all of those games that are going to push them for 4 quarters, and they're maybe going to be a bit too banged up going into the playoff. I think that Ohio State has a tougher road to the national championship than what all of the preseason conversations would suggest.
Connor, I'm going to do honesty hour here. I have a list of teams written here that says do not draft, and Ohio State is at the top of them, but I saw the value here, and now I'm realizing why I had put them on this list because I thought you were going to draft them. I had thought I schemed this out, and I was like, don't touch Oregon, don't touch Ohio State. And then I got greedy, and I did a little bit of the Cleveland Browns draft thing where I drafted the wrong guy with the same name. Anyway, that being said,
whoa. That was the Raiders.
The Raiders. There we go. Yeah. It's like it's one of those two things. Yeah. No, but I'm with you. Like, I'm not going to then defend it because that's why I literally have written down schedule in all caps.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking at it, their schedule is not what you would think it would be. And I lean back on their talent. But again, even I shouted out that they've lost all these guys on defense. I think that ultimately, if you go like, am I scared of at USC? No. Right. But at the same time, I think the big 3 that we circle here is Oregon, Indiana, Michigan. Now, I feel better about Michigan without getting all traces of that old Michigan staff that just had Ryan Day's number for whatever reason. Maybe awesome, but I think they're more competent.
Kyle Whittingham's a downgrade?
No, that's what I'm saying. I think they have more competent coaches now. That's what's so frustrating is that when they were bad teams, they still found a way to beat Ryan Day. So as much as I want to be like, oh, surely that can't happen again, I thought that like 3 years in a row. And so, yeah, Ohio State, I'm right there with you, man. I think at the value, like it would be hard for me to see them missing the postseason, but you're making a compelling case. Like exactly what you said. They're a high ceiling team if they make it. Because by that point, they would have had 2 or 3 very impressive games. So I'm going to stick with that because I got the easy path. I don't want to be Mr. Schedule guy, but you're absolutely right. I think that maybe they're not quite as talented as a usual Ohio State team, maybe 80%. And then the path for them sets up pretty horribly. So not loving this one. You got me. You got my ass.
Well, there's like, and you got you totally. I mean, look to that point, I feel like I'd been played in this draft, but if you could look into the crystal ball and you knew that Ohio State was already in the playoff, you would feel like your chances are really good. In the scenario that I mapped out of them being maybe a bit too banged up and kind of following maybe the Georgia path that we've seen in recent memory, you wouldn't feel like that's as likely. You would feel like, look, we already saw this 2 years ago. Just get Ohio State into the field and talent's going to take over with that roster, that's certainly on the table. It is. So I'm in the minority by saying this. Like, I realize that they were going to get picked. They were going to get picked. You just maybe could have waited another round. That's all.
Okay. This pick is really what hinges it. What you got here?
I got Indiana. Unbiased.
I'm actually going to stop. Okay. I actually was not going to take them next. Okay. Let's go.
Okay. So our guy, Doug Lesmerises, he does the unofficial Big Ten poll every year because the Big Ten, for whatever reason, they've copied everything that the SEC has done to this point with like the media day stuff and some of the conversations about non-conference scheduling. The Big Ten is, for the most part, like copied the SEC and what the SEC did in the 2010s. I don't know why they don't do a preseason media poll and they rely on Doug to be able to do this every single year. I was pretty stunned that Ohio State was the pick to win the conference, knowing that I think Indiana's path to be able to do so is better. I think Oregon's my pick to win the Big Ten. So I'm not even saying that I think Indiana's the most likely to win the conference, but their over-under's 10.5 wins for a reason. And it's not just because they won a national championship, though that's certainly part of this. This is before the Stephen Daly news broke on Tuesday, where we found out, oh yeah, like this guy last year who had 19 TFLs for Indiana who didn't even play in the postseason because he got hurt celebrating the Big Ten championship. Like, oh yeah, he's going to be one of those 5-5 guys. And they're very likely going to be able to bring him back. Again, nothing's final on that, but just throw him on that defensive line. No big deal.
Starting to hate y'all so much, man. Oh, right. You heard him so celebrating the Big Ten championship. Hey, you would have him last year.
First world problems, very much so. IU is in this spot with what'll be its highest preseason ranking in program history. Will earmuff this. Please earmuff this. Because all signs point to Curt Cignetti being the total inverse of post-2019 Ed Ogeron. Okay? We know that he is wired the exact way you would want a coach wired coming off a national championship. All the Saban comms, whatever. Time will tell if that's going to prove to be prophetic. But this mindset that he has had with clearly like hiding his trophies and stuff like that, only bringing them out. Like I heard him say on Part of My Take, like he's only going to bring them out when recruits are coming in and stuff like that. Like this guy moved on so quickly, and talking about being behind on recruiting after he celebrated the national championship is like a very Saban-esque thing to say. And it doesn't guarantee any of that stuff. But so much of this is going to depend on what that complacency factor looks like. And if you're not in that position where that's a concern, which I don't worry about with this coaching staff, that's really good news. So much of this will also depend on Josh Hoover replacing Fernando Mendoza. Don't forget that Curtis Rourke, a guy who played the latter half of the season on torn ACL, that guy finished 9th in the Heisman voting as well. So like you're talking about potentially third consecutive guy finishing top 10 in the Heisman voting. IU is loaded in the trenches. They add Nick Marsh to that receiver room that already includes preseason All-American and late season hero Charlie Becker. Like they're very stacked now at the skill positions in ways that I am not used to talking about with Indiana football. All right. Like Turbo Richard coming over from Boston College is kind of an underrated move. They're loaded.
Turbo Richard.
It's just a great running back name. Your running back's name is Turbo. Like, come on, dude. Sign him up for 1,000. Like, I don't care if he's 5'9". The schedule is Notre Dame-ish, and it's not being discussed in that same sort of way because it's the Big Ten, and it still looks tougher than what it was in 2024. They do have that Ohio State home game, and then they go on the road against Michigan right after that. And then they have the late season trip to Washington. We do not sleep on what it means to win as a visiting team in Husky Stadium. But the non-conference schedule is a joke. It's ridiculous. It's the single worst thing that Curt Cignetti and Scott Dolson, the AD, do. Okay? It just is. Like, hand up. I admit that. But the defending
champs, the basketball team?
Say it again?
You said that's the worst thing him and the AD do. I was like, have you seen the basketball team? No, I'm just kidding.
Cignetti's not part of that.
I was talking about the AD. I was just giving you crap.
Yeah, Cignetti's done the single best thing for Indiana basketball, which is say that Purdue sucks and Ohio State, so does Ohio State and Michigan during an Indiana basketball game. That's the best thing that's happened to IU basketball in recent memory.
There you go.
But them making it back to the playoff feels very realistic. I've said enough unbiased things.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but devil's advocate, how much of that stuff do you think is performative, really? As far as like hiding the trophies and like, oh, we're not smelling our own. Like, do you think he's really like that on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Everything that I have gathered from him, from people that I have talked to, is that he is a unique cat. He just is. And that's the way that he treats players. That's the way that he treats coaches, who he is behind the scenes. I maybe some of it is performative. Certainly what he said at Big Ten Media Days, he had that in the holster. That was performative and ready to go. He was trying to prove a point with what he said about the SEC without naming the SEC. But I do think that this guy is just wired in a very unique way that if your coach, if your head coach was saying and doing the things that he was doing, be like, well, yeah, why would I pick against that guy? That's everything. That's not sitting there looking at press clippings. That's not being a guy that's too into himself. No. Like this is ideally the way that you're supposed to be wired. And I think that it's just in his personality. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to be a hater of Curt Cignetti, right, you'd say, okay, the rules are changing. Although that's actually helping him this year. To your point about the guy who hurt himself, like you're getting some guys back that you wouldn't have, and like so, if you could compare it to like Kirby Smart, right, you'd say, okay, maybe Kirby got a little bit too set in his ways. Maybe the same thing will happen to Cignetti. But if that were to be the case, I think it would take 2 and 3 years. So I think projecting out 1 year. I'm with you. I think that him being kind of a cartoon character in a good way helps him. And I think that whatever adjustments he has to make, he won't have to make for a minute. So I think he's going to be a fixture. I'll say it to you like that. I think that they will be year in and year out competing for the Big Ten, playoff or bust. Does that mean that they're going to be a wagon every single year? Probably not. But I think what you're talking about is the floor as far as the Coach O comparison. And I think it's very true.
Yeah. I think the floor is still incredibly high, and we'll see what more money does to that program, but I can't sit here and project them to all of a sudden fall off the face of the earth. Okay. This is your fourth pick.
We're back again with some chaos. I'm going BYU, baby. Let's go.
Go.
Yes.
Come on.
That's who I was going to take instead of Ohio State. That's why I celebrate when you got IU, you homer. Wow. Now you got 2 Big Ten teams, and I'm spreading out the love. Look at this. This is another team that plays Notre Dame. I've got this triumvirate of teams that play nobody but each other. You can't stop me. And so that being said, now the biggest alarming thing about this team is that they had such a special year last year, and we are Pop-Tart Bowl respecters, but it ended up in a Pop-Tart Bowl. The committee has shown you that this team has to overcome something that no team we've talked about has so far. But ultimately, I think that they can build on that momentum. And part of that momentum for them is not having to play Texas Tech in the regular season. Part of that momentum is Texas Tech taking a step back from last year, I believe, right? Hard to say. But I think that this conference in the Big 12 is theirs to lose. I think that BYU has a ton of momentum coming out of last year. Like I said, I think their schedule is very favorable. And I think that in their mind's eye, they can look at Texas Tech as the other and say, we're the team to beat in this conference, right? That everything kind of runs through us. We have our culture. We have our head coach locked up long-term. We are sturdy, right? And I think they have more of a case for disrespect than Notre Dame does. And they made that their whole personality last year, right? So I think that turning in back-to-back impressive seasons will be enough to get maybe that kind of benefit from the committee. Now, again, you play Notre Dame at home. Just play them close. This is 2026. This isn't the old days of yonder. Play them close. We're not predicting a dub there, right? We're at Utah. That game can always get a little bit scary,
won
right?
3 in a row, and they've won 3 in a row.
Right. No. I know. And of course, Utah, Whittingham, like I get all that. But at the same time, like I'm just looking at potential downfalls, but they're not losing at the bounce house. Let me put it to you like that. Like in terms of games that they can actually foreseeably lose, I just don't see a ton in here. We have kind of newer Big 12 teams in here. We have some Cincinnati. We have teams that haven't really shown me much lately, as in Kansas and Baylor. And so, yeah, I think overall, even if you lose both of those games at Notre Dame at Utah, it's a rivalry game. You never know, right? We just talked about this with Michigan. But I think even in that situation, you can go into the Big 12 championship, win that game, and still get in.
I hate you for this. I hate you for this so much. I want to BYU. BYU is going to be my last pick. I assumed I was getting BYU with my last pick. This is heartbreaking to see. It's like seeing your ex with somebody else. It's painful. It really is, man. Like
they're BYU. They can handle a couple exes. Come on now.
Yeah. Goodness.
Could have a throuple with BYU. It's okay.
Oh, golly. I talked to some very informed people in the Big 12 this year before the Brendan Sorsby thing happened. And they're like, BYU, man, just trust BYU. They've learned that. gone 15-3 in conference play the last 2 years. I understand the Texas Tech hurdle is still going to loom large, and until you overcome it, it's a thing. Kind of like what we talked about with, Penn State against Ohio State. It's still a thing, and it could be a thing for them going into that conference championship game if they get it. But you're right. I mean, I think the schedule is a little bit different this year in that you have the Notre Dame opportunity. You have that marquee opportunity in non-conference play, and that could be a statement type game. And if you beat an undefeated Notre Dame team with what should be an unbelievable crowd, that is the type of perception changing game for you. Like I love Bear Bachmeier. I think people forget too that last year, Jake Retzloff was the plan. And then all that stuff came out with him in July. And they had to pivot to this 19-year-old, which is not something, 18-year-old at the time, Bear Bachmeier was. That's not something they do at BYU. Like they love the old dudes. All right. And part of the reason why, so like I still get comments on this for my playoff bracket that we posted like 2 months ago in the next round. And I have BYU beating Bama in the first round. And Bama fans don't know that it's BYU's year. That's okay. But I just close my eyes and I picture a team like that is going to be really old in the trenches, dominating a team like Bama that's kind of doing like the 2-year plan with that. And I love so many elements of this team. And even if I'm a little bit skeptical of them losing Jay Hill, the defensive coordinator to Michigan, I just think Kalani Sitake's the guy. I do. And I hate that you got him. Here's another thing, Will. Like this is big picture. And BYU is certainly part of this conversation. It's a dwindling conversation, but it's something that I keep in mind for teams like BYU and USC here. So far in the 12-team playoff era, we have seen a lot of new faces make the field from the power conference ranks, first-time playoff participants. So let's exclude the group of 5 for this conversation because it's a little bit more likely that you're going to see a new team, make the playoff for the first time like last year with Tulane, or even like Boise State making it for the first time. Like that's kind of baked in. Just power conference teams making the playoff for the first time. In 2024, the first year of the 12-team playoff, we had 5: Penn State, Indiana, SMU, Tennessee, Arizona State. Last year in 2025, we had 4 new power conference teams make the playoff: Texas A&M, Miami, Ole Miss, Texas Tech. That number's just likely going to go down as there are less and less teams available. Like I was reading a PFF article of like the most likely teams to make their first playoff appearance. And you realize like it kind of thins out a bit. It's like BYU, USC, Utah, Florida. And then everybody after that, you go, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's realistic to project 2 or 3 of those teams to make the field this year. And I'm kind of wishing going back that I could have done that because I don't think I did that. But BYU being that team to break through this year, I hate that you took them, Will. I really do.
It's spreading the wealth, right? And I'm gonna say this in like I'm not kidding, like a positive way. Having a culture matters so much in the portal era of college football, and what BYU is, and what they do, and what they sell. Honestly, similar to Notre Dame is, I think, something that goes beyond football. And ultimately, you can't litigate the things that create BYU's inherent advantages, right? You can't litigate the way that like people from around the country, people from around the world feel compelled to come to BYU. You can't litigate that, they have these like trips they go on that don't really count against your eligibility. And I mean, maybe they will make a special rule for that, but it doesn't feel necessary for just kind of this one special situation. And what you've seen, or what we've seen on the basketball side, really makes me feel like BYU is a sleeping giant. And that's why I kind of say that about Texas Tech, where I go, I feel like they could have a little bit of sour grapes and go look across the aisle and go, everyone's giving all this love and all this drama to Texas Tech. We're the real sleeping giant in this conference.
They've ramped up big time. Like the contract that Kalani Sitake got, I know everybody made a big deal about Crumble Cookie and keeping him from taking the Penn State job. They have really, really ramped up the last couple of years. And those losses to Texas Tech probably only helped that.
Literally. And that's exactly where I'm going, is that, doing what they've done on the basketball side is much harder than believing in selling BYU as a football team. And so when you start to see these little like traces of like things that are starting to come together, where with donors, it's all about momentum. It's all about, we gave $1. What does it give us? Every dollar this donor base has spent has come back to them like 5 or 6 fold. So I think as they continue down this path of stability and of having a culture in this very scary world, I think it's only going to go up from here, honestly.
Yeah, I'm amazed that BYU came off the board this early, but nonetheless, I will continue. Give me my pick to win the SEC, Texas. Getting them here feels probably like a value, I would think. Well, agree or disagree with this. Texas is the only team in the country where if they don't make it to the national championship this year, it's going to be considered a significant disappointment. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. We talked about that. I had to kind of think about it. We talked about it before Sark talked at media days. I think that it would be harder to sell. Again, going back to the donors and everything. When Sark is making the comments about we're basically cutting guys and we have this like pro roster and we have all these like structures in place. To then immediately turn the page and go, okay, but now we're going to win a national championship.
Yeah.
Arts has moved on, but now, and so yeah, I think this is really it for them. You don't fire our boy PK if you think you're happy with participation.
I agree. Some might say Notre Dame. But if we're just talking about making the national championship, Marcus Freeman's already been there.
Notre Dame, as long as they have Marcus Freeman, I think their fan base is happy because he's made it clear that lots of teams want him. I think they could be perpetual 10-win participators, and that fan base would be, thank God you're not Brian Kelly.
I would agree with that. I would agree. So that's why I would struggle to put them in that. But every other team that I would look at and go, well, if they didn't make it there, would we feel that way? Like Mario Cristobal doesn't get back with this Miami team. Be like, yeah, well, they made it last year, and they still have ridiculously good funding. And I just think that Texas is the only one that's truly in this spot. And maybe that adds too much pressure to them. But look, it's such a pivotal year for all the reasons that we've already outlined, of course. But Sark can also sell the revenge angle to his team, which is something that we know coaches search for as much as possible. He's telling his team, they didn't want you in the field at 9-3. They didn't want you there. You could have been there. You could have beaten anyone in the country. Not Florida. But they didn't want you there. And I think missing out last year, but still finishing strong, that should have added some juice to those offseason workouts. And obviously knowing that you have guys that are competing for spots in a very literal sense, as Sark outlined, that certainly helps. I always think that when a team has that early headliner non-conference game, it ramps up what you're doing in the offseason. They have that with the Ohio State game week 2. I do think the schedule floor is 9-3. So I don't want to pretend like that's impossible, but Sark doesn't have to face, in the regular season at least, the 2 SEC coaches who have had his number, Kirby, DeBoer. It's a no excuses team. If Texas is on the outside looking in at the college football playoff again this year, woof. I don't think that'll be the case.
It's so funny because you said like revenge, and I was sitting here going, okay, they beat Oklahoma pretty convincingly. They beat A&M pretty convincingly. They're not playing Georgia. Yeah, they play Ohio State again. And I'm going, that is the most Texas brain thing ever, but you're so right. Where it's like, oh, you're 9-3. We were disrespected. It's like, yeah, buddy, again, worry about beating Florida. Like, worry about that. But you're right. Like, within Steve Sarkisian's brain, you're so right. And I think that does like add a little bit of fire. He's going to be fiery. Is it going to work out? I don't know, but I'm right there with you. And I would also argue, to your point, I think Oregon's getting into that championship for bust. I think we have another year let down for your boy. We might be in trouble.
I thought about that, and I think you could probably it just depends, because if another team for the Big Ten emerges and passes Oregon up as like this team wins national championship or something like that, then okay, we're having those conversations. I do think there's a little bit more stability there. It depends on what missing out on a national championship would look like. If they get blown out again, and that's the way their season ends with a third consecutive blowout loss in the playoff, eek. But if Oregon loses in the semifinal by a touchdown or something like that to Georgia or to Texas, is it all of a sudden Dan Lanning's never going to win the big one? For some, it will. For like Brandon Walker and people like that, yeah, that's fine. But I think for people that are looking at this objectively, if they were to get that far, I still would tend to think that's on the table. Maybe I should include Oregon in that conversation, though.
Yeah. And again, it's just like vibes can be whatever you want them to be, right? And for them, they might just, like, I'm not saying this to fair, like, they might just be happy with what they've gotten because they've never won a natty, So, like, maybe this is what the Oregon kind of brand is. But back to Texas, Yeah, I mean, getting them this late, I think, is for sure a steal. I think that in terms of the two teams that we'd feel good about, obviously the two teams that are projected to play for the SEC championship, I think this is our last safe SEC pick. So I think getting them both really puts you in a good spot.
An Oregon-Texas semifinal would be great theater.
That would
That's a
feed
matchup.
families. Now, I mean,
Whoa.
like those two coaches, the pregame handshake would be so icy. There, you would hear like electricity, like two Pikachus like hugging in the middle, like they'd just be.
Would be a really bad day to be a Steve Sarkisian security guard. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Good Lord. All right, your last pick. Who are you going with?
Oh, okay.
This gets tough, right around here. This is where I thought BYU was going to be my wild card, and I was going to get to go a little bit off the board here. But I think we've established kind of the most clear path teams.
I mean, I'm going to pick an SEC team here, and there's three that I could pick, and every one of them is going to make me upset. Two of them I'd hate myself, and the other one I'd be called a homer. Oh God, this is a real nightmare situation.
By the way, Will is saying LSU for the homer stuff, Alabama. and then Ole Miss and Alabama for the one.
Yeah, because if Alabama just comes, but I already rooted for Alabama last year. It wasn't fun. Oh gosh. Okay. You know what? Just to hedge my bets, give me Ole Miss. Give me Ole Miss. I have said consistently, I'm going to follow your thing here. Even after talking to our guy Brad, he's the Lord of Ole Miss. I think he's a smart guy. I think that this year, 2026, is going to be a good Ole Miss year. 2027, don't worry about that. I think this year there was enough hangover from Lane Kiffin. There's enough talent on the roster. Pete Golding's defense didn't need a tackle last year. I think this year they're going to ride that momentum and actually kind of be smelling their own Kool-Aid and be in a great position, because it just sets up too well for them. Like I said, keeping your quarterback, keeping your running back, again, whatever you needed on defense, you had it last year. It's not like you really – I know they lost a lot specifically at LSU, and again, Brad talks about that, and Daugherty and Mr. Uman. Yep. And so that being said, like I know they lost a lot, but I think that just in terms of where they're at as a team, they're so unified, and I think that adrenaline can take you so far. I think they beat LSU and Oxford, and I think that is the difference between these two teams, honestly. I think that Elaine having to build something from the ground up and Pete kind of keeping the train rolling, I think that game will determine a playoff spot. I think that Ole Miss wins it at home.
I would have taken them if you didn't, so it's a good thing that you took them. What's the win the breakup energy week to week with this team? Can you sustain that? It's like when you listen to a pregame hype song, something like that, and you're thinking to yourself, does that matter in the middle of the third quarter? Because it's got to be more than that. And I do think that Ole Miss has the pieces to make sure that it's more than that. Obviously, I picked them to go to an SEC championship. I've said I think Trinidad Chambliss is the best returning quarterback in the sport. You've got a head coach in Pete Golding that has already won multiple playoff games. So you check a ton of those boxes. And if there's any sort of over under on their projection this year, I'll take the over. I'll be right there with you. The only thing I wonder about, besides just the schedule, because the schedule is just an obvious Achilles heel, is if they all of a sudden in mid-November don't have that energy anymore. And it's an off season of talking about this. And yeah, maybe you got some of those big time emotional victories early in the season, one being against LSU. And you're like, man, we had that energy there, but it wasn't quite able to be sustained in what's a really difficult schedule. Again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I agree with you. I think they are worthy of being taken. It bothers me when I see any preseason ranking that doesn't have them in the top 10. So all those things can prove to be true. I liked the edge that we saw from them at media days. I loved the response that we got from Kewan Lacey when Matt Moscona is sitting there asking him like, hey, what's your relationship like with Lane Kiffin? He's like, well, he's my old head coach last year. That's the type of thing that can fuel you to have the right offseason mindset. Will that be enough late in the season with those games that are really going to define how this is going to go? That's kind of the ironic thing, is that as much as we feel like that is a fork in the road game against LSU to win the breakup, their season won't be defined by that. That might define whether or not they win the breakup, but their season is going to kind of be defined by what happens in November. with some of those games down the stretch. So I'm right there with you. I like that you took them. I hate that you BYU and Ole Miss. This draft did not go as I thought it would at all.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. I agree with you, but I'll take the other perspective on this. That Louisville game, they gotta win that Louisville game. They gotta win that. If they
I've done
struggle,
a bad job of talking about that game, and I need to be better about that because Isaac Brown against a defense that struggled to tackle last year could be a problem. Jeff Brom, with all that time to prepare, could be a problem. You're right. You're right. I've dismissed that game.
I am honestly of the opinion, because I'm with you as far as the new boyfriend, new coach energy, sustaining them early. They got to come out and punch Louisville in the mouth. I mean, they gotta really, because if that game is a loss, you could very easily sell me that things get sideways on them. But they win that game. I think they win the LSU game, and then to me, if they can just go 1-2 through, I know, but at Texas, at Oklahoma, Georgia, in like a 4-week stretch, no bye week, 4-week stretch. If you just go 1-2 in those games, I think people would get it. I think that among SEC teams, you're not exactly going to have like the hellish gauntlet argument that some teams will. But again, it's beating Louisville, beating LSU, and then being competitive in those games. And like, I think there's some ways that the way you beat Georgia could matter. If you beat Texas, the way you beat Texas could matter. But I think their whole season, to your point, you talk about mid-November, that's exactly when it's going to be rubber meets the road, because they host Georgia, they go to Norman, and man, the Brent Venables defense at that point in the season, when you're talking about a play caller that's his first year at a place like Ole Miss, could get a little bit scary. But I think that ultimately they have just enough this year to get over the hump.
Yeah, they are the first team on this list where if they went 8-4, it wouldn't be shocking. Everybody else, if they went 8-4, some might say that about BYU, but they don't know that it's BYU's here. Everybody
Miami.
else would be like, touche, very fair point. All right, my last pick. Should I do it? What do you think, Will?
Go ahead.
All right, we'll take Bama. And you know what? I know for all the reasons that people are going to tell me that this team is not going to be in contention, doesn't have national championship upside. Maybe it's going to get to the playoff, but then what's it actually going to do when it gets there? Look, when you get to this point, I don't really feel like you can make the case that so many of these other teams that I could have picked in this spot would have a better case of making noise once they get there. Then again, you would have said the same thing last year about Miami. But I think you look at Alabama and know that they are in a favorable spot with the draw that they got in conference play, not conference play too, with a coach who has won all these big time games. And those are two good boxes to check for this discussion. Will they be good enough in the trenches to be a perfect team? I highly doubt it. Can they overcome their weaknesses in similar ways to what we saw last year? Yeah, I think so. I picked Keelan Russell to be the SEC Freshman of the Year. I did like SEC individual awards and all that stuff as well on TechSag, so you can go check that out with like order of finish that people already know that I've done, and awards and whatnot. It's kind of fun to map that out, but that's sort of a lame award too. The more I think about it, it should just be True Freshman of the Year. I don't know why they do that. Keelan Russell's a redshirt freshman, nonetheless. I think he's going to be a mixture of keeping defenses off balance and guessing, because there's pretty limited film of him at this point of his college career. And then he's just going to run into a couple of those defensive coordinators that are elite defensive minds, or maybe not even defensive coordinators, but elite defensive minded head coaches who just know how to confuse an inexperienced quarterback. And Bama will lose multiple games in regular season. Okay. But the path is still good enough. And when push comes to shove, I don't necessarily have the same fear about Kalen DeBoer in big time games I do some of these other coaches. Okay. Like some of these other coaches that you go down the list and you're like, USC, I guess you could put in there, but with a difficult schedule and it's Lincoln Riley, I don't really feel great about that. Brent Venables would check that box. I think he's won big time games. I think he's been able to kind of, push some of those narratives to the side. Like Mike Elko, I would say I have more concerns about the finishing. It's not so much a big time game thing. And then Michigan with all the new pieces with Kyle Whittingham, like I'm giving you all the teams that I think others would have probably taken in that spot ahead of Bama. But I just find myself going, Maybe this is exactly what they need. Saban has outlined that, his unbiased opinion. My unbiased opinion is that Bama is worth a selection. You considered it, so I'm not crazy here.
Yes, and here's the question I was grappling with. So I'll ask you this: who is the absolute dog water team that's going to beat Bama this year?
Nick Roush said that Kentucky's going to beat Bama when they come to Lexington. I love Nick. Ugh. Not quite getting there. South Carolina? 2 competitive games.
Yeah.
2 very competitive games so far.
Yeah, it would be electric if they were to lose at Vandy, but I don't think Vandy is there yet. I mean, I don't know if we consider Tennessee to be bad, but I could see them losing that game. There's going to be one. That's the beautiful thing, is that Bama has one minimum, pretty much 2 inexplicable losses every year so far to DeBoer. And so I think that's the one that's hard to pick for them. If you could just contain those poor performances to one against a good team, you'd probably be better. That would actually make them a better team if they could just play like crap against one good team and not one bad team that they could beat. But anyway, yeah, I'm interested by them this year because like when I asked you, that was like one of my favorite bites during media days where it was like, hey, if you had to pick somebody to bet on to be an All-American from Bama, you're like Keelan Russell. I was like, oh, so I'm going to ask this one more question and we'll get out of here. If you got to pick one, are we taking Ryan Grubb or Mike Bobo?
It's a good question. Am I the head coach? I'm asking, do I get is Ryan Grubb, am I getting them in their current situations? Like, am I getting Ryan Grubb with Kalen DeBoer? Or is it just like, it's my team and Ryan Grubb is running the offense?
That's a great, I would say situation. Let's just say offense versus offense to make it easier.
I'd still probably go Ryan Grubb. But I have to think about it. I do. And I think both of them have their weaknesses. Man, if Ryan Grubb fails this year with this team, and this offense feels like it's got too many obvious weaknesses and all of these areas that you should have addressed in the offseason, that just looks like it's not going to be a part of Bama's DNA. I do wonder, we'll see the loyalty tested. Those are the 2 OCs in this conference where like their head coach is going to go to bat for them. Public opinion might be this, but their head coach is telling you that. Those guys are tied at the hip. It's a good question, though, because week to week, it does feel like it changes.
Yes, and the backstory here, guys, I know we have some new listeners and everything from Alabama, but I was all over Alabama last year. I was like the biggest Bama supporter last year. I thought Ryan Grubb was going to change their offense, and I was wrong. And so ultimately, I'm not going to do it 2 years in a row. You know, it was a coin flip or a chance I took last year. So that's why I was like, well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing twice. But I'm not even really lower on Alabama than I was last year. I do think they're going to figure it out. Last year was just shocking to me. So this is the classic Alabama, classic Kalen DeBoer back against the wall. We end up somehow winning 10 games.
We have seen the last 2 college offenses that Ryan Grubb has run. It has yielded a first-round quarterback. Just saying. Michael Penix still counts, technically. Don't ask about the NFL stuff. All right. So our draft, the way that this shook out in very surprising fashion, you took Notre Dame, Miami, Ohio State, BYU, Ole Miss. I took Oregon, Georgia, Indiana, Texas, Alabama. No group of 5 teams.
I feel like I cooked there.
I think you did too. I hate that. Was there one team off the board? I named Oklahoma, A&M, Michigan, LSU, USC. It feels like if you do this exercise, there's a separator and it's like a top maybe 15 or 16 as well. So I'm going to include Washington in that conversation as well. If you want to talk about path, Washington, a very favorable draw in the Big Ten. Some are looking at Penn State year 1 with Matt Campbell going, team that could actually have a higher year 1 floor than what some would think. But is there a team that you looked at and you're like, that very easily could have been my last pick?
I think the group of 5 stuff is very feast or famine, right? Because one game is completely like you have 0 points. Obviously, like I said, I talked about my last 3 was Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU. I think LSU is, again, about a year away. I cannot say enough. I think the fortunes of those 2 teams are going to flip after this year. So just got to take our lumps as LSU fans. But yeah, I mean, again, I think Michigan, same situation there. I think let's look out for them in 2027. That might be a situation where just getting an adult in the room And like, I'm so big on Bryce Underwood. I think they're going to improve because they're going to be a serious program, but not quite there yet. So I think we're going to see a lot of lower building, a lot of basement or foundation building this year.
What if I had taken Michigan instead of Ohio State? Instead, I'm sticking with my playoff bracket.
Yeah, that would have been hilarious. I mean, like I said, I kind of got faded into Ohio State because I actually kind of thought you were going to take Michigan. I was like, hold on.
Yeah. No, nonetheless. Fun exercise, though. I like being able to do that. And if I win by a significant of a margin this year as I did last year, then we'll do something else next year. Does that sound good?
Sure. I got you this year, though. I'm coming.
I think so, too. I'm in trouble. All right. Let's kick it to Brad Crawford. Great to be able to talk about his preseason top 25, talk some South Carolina stuff with him as well. Brad is just so on top of it. Follow Brad on all of his social media. You can find him posting college football content just seemingly around the clock. So here's our guy, Brad Crawford. I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest, one of my favorite guests, of course. It is Brad Crawford. Brad, before we get into your preseason top 25, where are you at with Shane Beamer right now? Have we made up? Do I or maybe Justin King? Do we need to play peacemaker in this whole thing after the Virginia Tech, that whole deal last year? Like, where are we at with Shane?
Bringing that up, topic one. Wow. I had not spoken to Shane this offseason. Obviously, he's on the SEC's hottest seat, so he's got his own issues right now to worry about. But me and Shane, as far as I know, are on good terms. I think South Carolina has a top 25 roster. Whether that translates to a top 25 season for the Gamecocks, who knows? But I'm looking forward to the season getting started and seeing how well they do.
Brad, we know you're sorry, good.
As far as you know, on good terms. That's what I
love. Brad, you're a national guy now, but we'll always see you as our favorite South Carolina guy. So I gotta ask you, man. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster for Shane, right? Where are the fans at right now, and what would it take to kind of meet their expectations going into this year?
Yeah, to be honest, Will, I think Gamecock fans' expectations are always in maybe a different stratosphere than they should be. That's just the fact that this fan base loves this team so much. But I think a 7 or 8 win season would more than appease this fan base, as long as one of those victories maybe comes against Clemson, and then you win one of those games you're not supposed to against Alabama or Texas A&M or Oklahoma or something. But if this team goes 5-7, that's probably it for Shane Beamer. I'm on the record saying that as long as they get to 6 wins and bowl eligibility, I think he'll stick around. Obviously, that's up to Jeremiah Donati and some of those deep-pocketed boosters in Columbia. But for me, the only reason he's on the SEC's biggest hot seat is because, 5 coaches got fired last cycle, And Shane would have been like number 3 or 4 this cycle had a couple of those guys been retained. So Shane knows the expectations are high. I think they're pretty high nationally as well. But I could see this team finishing anywhere from maybe 6 to 8 wins.
So we all came up at Saturday Down South, right? But kind of doing a little bit of research for this, Brad. I saw you just made a prediction. It was interesting to me. It was like a Big Ten team is going to win it all this year. Not exactly a specific one, but just the Big Ten loose. How'd you get there?
Yeah, I would take the Big Ten against the field. I mean, you give me the Big Ten's top 4 teams, I think they win the next 2 or 3 national championships until Lane Kiffin gets things rolling really in Baton Rouge. Maybe that happens this year for Lane Kiffin. I don't think it will. They will be a playoff team, LSU that is, but I don't see them winning at all. I just like what the Big Ten has right now in terms of elite coaches at the top. Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, and Curt Cignetti, man. You're not going to find a better threesome than that in any other league. I know SEC has Kirby Smart. Steve Sarkisian needs to still prove it on a national stage and actually win something at Texas before I put him in that realm. But I like Oregon as a team that maybe hasn't won one yet, but could potentially be the Big Ten's 4 straight, winning its first. See Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana do it. Maybe Oregon now is that team, but there's so much hype right now behind the Ducks. I'm a little bit wary. And then I heard Dan Lanning say on a podcast maybe last week that, our expectations, CFP title or bust, and he kind of balked at that notion. So that worries me a little bit that maybe he's not buying into all that hype either.
Oregon winning a national championship, preseason number 1. So
it's a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And I think he said that on part of my take too, which, look, I think that Lanning is in a spot that everybody's going to point to him and go, well, if anyone's going to be next, it's him, and it makes a lot of sense. But you went in a different direction. Your preseason top 25, it is out. You had a top 10. For those who haven't seen this, by the way, Brad Crawford on Instagram. Are you just Brad Crawford on Instagram now that you're just cranking out college football content on there?
I think it's B Crawford CBS, but you search Brad Crawford, you'll find me on TikTok, IG, X. Yeah.
You hitting some dances out there on TikTok? What's the TikTok vibe like?
Trying, man. Trying.
Goodness. All right. So your preseason top 10, you've got LSU at 10, USC at 9, Texas Tech at 8, Georgia at 7, Indiana at 6, Notre Dame at 5, Texas at 4, Oregon at 3, Ohio State at 2, Miami at 1. So like you're talking like first-time national champ, and Miami is obviously not like a historic first-time national champ, but like I think for this era of college football, that would be considered a different way of being a first-time champ. We know that Miami is overwhelmingly, the favorite in the ACC, but why did you go with the Canes at number 1 above all the rest, knowing that you could probably pick some flaws with every single one of those contenders?
Yeah, I think I'm the only national guy this offseason that has Miami at number 1. The Canes were number 7 in our post-spring rankings at CBS. I was the only guy of our 10 or 12 analysts who put Miami in the top spot. I love what Mario Cristobal has coming back, but I am infatuated with that Darian Mensah acquisition and transfer portal. I watched him a lot last season living here in North Carolina at Duke. Fantastic quarterback. I think he fits Shannon Dawson's offense. Great man. And I asked Shannon Dawson last year outside the locker room after that loss to Indiana, like, who are y'all going after? And he kind of had his lips sealed, but they had a guy in mind, and that guy was Darian Mensah. Obviously, that whole shebang in January with Duke suing Mensah and all that, and Miami overpaying for him, but they feel like they got a potential Heisman front runner. I think he is going to be a Heisman finalist. Got a 1,000-yard back in Mark Fletcher returning. There's been a lot of questions about the offensive line, losing 4 starters. You signed the top-ranked left tackle in the country in Jackson Cantwell. He's an immediate starter. You've got guys behind him you feel good about. You signed 2 starters out of the portal. And then the defense. Despite losing Mesidor and Ruben Bain, man, they're going to have the best defense in the ACC. So I don't see these glaring holes that others maybe who have slotted Miami outside the top 5 see. I like Miami at worst finishing 11-1 and getting to that ACC championship game.
True or false, Brad? And maybe this is people that are texting you right now. Miami called you after ranking them number 1.
They did.
Look, here. You don't have to go into depth about that.
From Miami, but I got a long phone call. I'll just say that.
This is the funny thing about this stuff, and like I will keep the contents of that conversation private, but
sure.
People will put anything in their back pocket to try and fuel their team at this point of the year. And even someone who literally has a national voice and is willing to go out there with something like that and go and like basically give Miami the biggest attaboy that they can possibly have, they will still try and find the flaws in what you have to say. And if I've learned anything in this business, it is that. So I do find that funny. Miami will definitely do the chip on the shoulder, nobody believed in us thing, even though like literally everybody is believing them, including yours truly.
And then Curt Cignetti is going to do the same thing at Indiana. Coaches put him outside the top 5 despite 14 first-place votes. To me, that kind of showed this week that there's a third of the country that just loves Curt Cignetti and respects him. And then there's 2/3 that are like tired of all this, tangent he goes off of Big Ten Media Day. That was great, by the way. What Cignetti said, and then for the Big Ten to have him go last, just to dig the SEC at the end, it was magic, man.
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of teased it at the top here. You kind of predicted the power continuing to shift. I won't say shift; it's just staying with the Big Ten. And Connor talked about that in your top 10. We've only got a couple of. We don't have the biased ESPN rankings here. We have SEC teams, kind of lower in the top 10.
CBS is a Big Ten entity.
There you go. No, but that being said, what does the SEC have to do to kind of claw its way back, other than waiting for our savior Lane Kiffin to save us?
I think it needs some of these new first-year coaches to be ahead of schedule, maybe. And then a guy like Mike Elko, who is ahead of schedule at Texas A&M, is this going to be a one-year wonder for the Aggies? That's one team, Will, that in the SEC, I've got A&M 15th in my preseason poll. I think A&M could be a top 5 team, or A&M could be 7-5 and be outside the top 25. Like, it's very polarizing right now in College Station. I don't know if Marcel Reed's going to be a better player this season or worse without Casey Concepcion. I know they love Mario Craver and some of the guys they have in that wide receiver room, but it just feels like Texas A&M last season took advantage of a favorable slate by SEC standards. This is still a team that was down 4 touchdowns at home to an 8-loss South Carolina team. I can't get that out of my mind, after watching that game. So A&M is a team that is super volatile. And I think for the SEC to get back and potentially win outside of the season, they've got to have their good teams, Georgia, Texas, LSU, be elite and look really good in November.
Brad, I'm probably bearing the lead by saying this. Georgia only at number 7. That feels noteworthy. Why do you hate Georgia?
I was shocked Georgia was number 3 in the coaches poll. And I think that was out of respect for Kirby Smart. Obviously, since coaches vote on this, I think Georgia's going to be outside the top 5 of the AP poll here in 2 weeks. I'm not a huge believer in Gunnar Stockton and the Mike Bobo marriage. He's done some good things on third down, but there's no defensive coordinator, I think, on Georgia's schedule this season that sees that game like, oh no, Georgia's going to score 45 points on us. Can Georgia score 45 points? I don't know. There were some issues for me last season, despite a solid secondary. There were some breakdowns against Ole Miss, and really both those games they played Ole Miss. I know they split them, but the CFP lost specifically. And then offensive line has a couple new starters. Defensive line should be better. Georgia was at the bottom of the league last year in like havoc stats defensively, and that's worrisome. I know they're hard nosed and they tackle well, but you got to get after the passer and get that quarterback down. Georgia didn't do it, so. Out of respect for Kirby Smart, I'm not going to be the guy that picks Georgia to go 8-4 this season, but it's certainly a team that is probably going to get to the CFP, and it wouldn't surprise me if they lost in the quarters for third straight year.
Another team that I feel like you're a little bit lower on is Ole Miss. They're obviously bringing a lot of talent back. They're bringing back like kind of half of the coaching staff. What's your read on that situation?
Yeah, I'm not worried about Ole Miss at all offensively, despite losing really both masterminds, Lane Kiffin and his OC to LSU. But defensively, that's 9 new starters. Defensive line I like a lot, but losing a guy like TJ Daugherty to LSU was huge. Losing your top edge rusher to LSU was something that the Rebels probably can't replicate. And unless they beat LSU in September, it's a schedule that is not as favorable as it was last season. So I've got Ole Miss inside my top 15, but that's a team that I think is going to border on that 8-4, 9-3 range. And if there's an SEC team with 3 losses that gets in the playoff, it won't be Ole Miss because the schedule, like I said, is not as hard as, say, Oklahoma's or even Alabama's.
I do think strength of schedule is irrelevant when it comes to preseason rankings.
It matters. It matters. Man.
Why does it matter to you? Like, why do you do that?
So my preseason rankings, I try. If I've got Miami at 1, I think Miami is going to be 1 entering the 2026 CFP. I am trying to project win-loss records for all 25 teams. I do my preseason. I don't go based on summer hype. Schedule favorability means a lot to me and what they got returning. And that's how my top 25 goes, man.
Yeah, look, to each their own. I think that it's different. It's like I think we're having different conversations if we're talking about like predicting what the playoff field will look like. And obviously, like I respect your mindset, but like that's the thing that's tough for me with Ole Miss is like I do think the schedule is really difficult, but I'm not going to punish a team that was 20 seconds away from national championship in the preseason ranking when I feel pretty good about what their return. Whereas like Ohio State, if I were doing that exercise, I'd look at Ohio State's schedule and go, well, no, I don't think they're worthy of being like a preseason 2 or top 2 or preseason top 3 teams. Like, how do you factor that in for a team like Ohio State?
Yeah, if there's one 9-3 potential team that I think can get in the playoff and shake that no 3-loss team has gotten in. By the way, Alabama was a 3-loss team and got in, but the CFP just nixed that title game loss to Georgia and didn't care about it. I think Ohio State would be the team because they're going to lose at Texas in week 2. That's like one of my locks of the year. Sarkisian has been awaiting that game since losing in Columbus last year. And then Ohio State still has to go through, that gauntlet during the second half of the season. But Ohio State's a team roster-wise, man. They can compete with anybody in the country. And right now with LSU, Ohio State has spent about $42 million on this roster, which is just insane. They got a couple of true freshmen, too, who are going to play a big role. So Ohio State, I'm fine in my preseason top 5 with the Buckeyes.
talking about that Texas team, Will Muschamp will be an upgrade, a downgrade, or more of the same for that Texas defense?
I think he'll be an upgrade because Steve Sarkisian isn't going to be in that defensive room whatsoever. Steve Sarkisian, by hiring Will Muschamp, can now get back to being one of those ace in the hole play callers that we've seen him be during his career. Texas didn't call a bunch of great plays last season, but a couple of years ago, when they made back-to-back CFP semifinal appearances, Sarkisian was in his bag. That didn't happen last season. So I think Texas offensively will be much better with Will Muschamp on the defensive side of the ball. And Colin Simmons, Will Muschamp likes edge rushers who can get after guys, and he'll probably be a 9 or 10 sack player.
Now that I know that, your methodology for this whole ranking, how much does the 9-game conference schedule factor into that? Is it kind of a strength of schedule thing across the SEC where some people are looking at preseason and how everyone sits right now, and you're more so looking at how things are going to play out throughout the year?
Yeah, I had a column like 2 weeks ago that sort of detailed the SEC's move to a 9-game schedule is going to be detrimental to that conference long term. I don't think that the CFP committee, unless it changes its way of thinking from the last 2 years, is going to necessarily like a 9-3 team from the SEC versus an 11-2 BYU. What if BYU goes 11-1, loses the Big 12 championship game? At 11 wins, they're still getting in over a 9-3 Texas. It's going to happen because the committee cares more about win losses than they do strength of schedule and schedule metrics. So the 9-game schedule for me, I think, is going to separate the men from the boys in the coaching ranks. Guys like a Mark Stoops, for instance, former UK coach. Great year for him is 8-4, 9-3. I don't know if he could have done that with a 9-game conference schedule. And you're going to see some of those mid to lower tier coaches pile up more losing seasons because another weekend every year you got to play an SEC team. That's tough, man.
Brad, last one for you. How long until Dabo joins you on the pickleball court?
Clemson doesn't have a pickleball court yet at their state-of-the-art facility.
Probably do.
Dabo Swinney, this is very interesting to me, man. He's like getting the gang back together with the Chad Morris hire. I do not understand that. I have Clemson as a preseason top 25 team because I think the Tigers are going to finish in the top 25. Whether that's 8-4, 9-3, it'll happen. I don't see Clemson winning that opener, though. And maybe the main headline, Connor, coming out of week one is, LSU wins by 20 points and has Dabo not just lost his fastball. Does he have any pitches anymore?
What kind of pitch would it be if Dabo's on the mound and he's thrown out a first pitch? What's Dabo doing? He's probably bringing the gas because he runs down that hill like he's got hamstrings for days and he just can't possibly get hurt. What kind of pitch is Dabo throwing?
He's probably so confident. Yeah, he's gonna hang one and just dare you to hit it because he doesn't do portal. He doesn't like NIL. Doesn't like all this SEC and Big Ten boasting. So yeah, he's going to go with his best pitch and dare you to swing at it.
If he does Chad Morris, though, don't take that one out of context.
That's why Dabo's ERA is like 8.50 now. So,
goodness gracious, Brad, you're the best. Really appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, good to see you.
It was frustrating not seeing you at SEC Media Days. I'll be honest. We had enough former SDS people there. It would have been nice to add one more. Miss being able to sit with you right there in the main media area, but you were missed. Hopefully, we'll get to see you soon, man.
Y'all know SDS holds a special place in my heart, fellas.
Good seeing you again, man.
All right, well, let's close with some lad of the week. Mind if I start?
Go ahead.
Big topic of conversation, the type of thing that we would have talked about last week if we had a regular show. My lad of the week is Josh Heupel.
Okay.
The 2-game suspension for Arian Carter over a $427 flight was 100% the byproduct of the NCAA basically taking exception to Tennessee after the Nico Iamaleava ruling. That basically was the beginning of the end for the NCAA, if you want to go back, of realizing, no, they have no power anymore. Nonetheless, the NCAA, as it is still somehow capable of doing, suspended Tennessee's defensive leader for multiple games for accepting a pre-draft flight, but then coming back to school. He was working out at one of those facilities. And Josh Heupel was rightfully upset. The PG version of what he said was that it was BS and that it's an outdated rule. again, PG. The irony is that Carter reportedly paid back the $427, and he is likely making hundreds of thousands of dollars from Tennessee this year, directly from Tennessee. Yet the NCAA still just pretended like it was 2014 and threw the book at him with a multi-game suspension. From a football standpoint, well, this is significant because Tennessee is going to be without their best linebacker against Georgia Tech, who added Justice Haynes this offseason, who very much has best running back in college football potential. And that's after the Chaz Coleman thing unfolded. We've already talked about the questions year one of the Jim Knowles defense. So like, that's not nothing. It's not like he's just getting suspended for a couple of cupcakes. That's a real game on Tennessee's schedule that could shape perception of Josh Heupel this year. But I love that Heupel got out there and defended his guy. You can be bold in this day and age. Like, you can get out there, especially if it's against the NCAA. Like, everybody's going to be on your side there. I try not to cuss because I think strong language should actually mean something. And I think in our society, we're a little bit too numb to it. It's just kind of part of our culture. I'm not trying to sound preachy or that's just the way that I have tried to approach it as an adult. And I understand like it's different for every other person. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I think it means something coming from Josh Heupel in that way to come out and say this. That's a rallying cry for his team. And he can sell within that locker room that there are actual outside forces working against them and not some media poll or this person said you're going to be that or something like that. Like, no, literally the governing body, or the thing that still moonlights as the governing body of this sport, came out and is telling you that your best player on the defensive side of the ball cannot play because of an outdated rule. That's ammo. That is legitimate ammo for Tennessee. And it does hurt their on the field product, but man, for being able to kind of get that locker room going, I do think that Josh Heupel can and will play that to his advantage. And I just thought that this whole situation was another reminder of why Josh Heupel continues to be the adult in the room.
Man, the more I see out of this Tennessee situation, the more I feel myself rooting for them. And I know it's toxic. I know it's date Mike. I know it can't last, but like, I just feel like it's like
date Mike can last.
Date Mike can last.
How do you like your eggs in the morning?
I'm really rooting for like how do you like me now? Shout out you at karaoke. How do you like me now situation for Josh Heupel, where he's like, hey, I'm getting kind of screwed on one end by the NCAA with these outdated rules, and getting screwed on the other end by Chaz Coleman and giving this guy a suitcase full of money and hoping it'll help. And it's just all these things have broken against him. And he's like an underratedly kind of funny guy. He's got like kind of awkward timing, but if you really listen to him talk, he's got some zingers in there. And people like, again, the way he looks, the way he emotes, that doesn't exactly lend itself to that. But if you really listen to him, he's a pretty insightful guy. So I'm right there with you. I think that like they could surprise some people this year, maybe negatively, but I find myself rooting for him.
I do too. I really do too. Josh Heupel can have a How Do You Like Me Now season. He definitely can. It's very much on the table. This would be a good preamble for it. By the way, at karaoke, when I did How Do You Like Me Now, go search my Twitter. That video is somewhere posted the last couple weeks. I almost tore my ACL. That would have been tough. You can't tear your ACL on karaoke. By the way, like 2 beers deep, so we're not talking about like actually drunk. The stage was just a little bit smaller than I was anticipating. Did not have good spatial awareness. Need to have a better feel for when I'm out of bounds. It was tough. Your boy just almost stepped right off the stage, like mid chorus. I was like, this would be a tough way to go. I mean, that video would have definitely done some serious numbers had that happened. It would not have been a How Do You Like Me Now moment for me.
Look, here's what you do. You tear your ACL doing How Do You Like Me Now. You got to just seamlessly transition to I ain't as good as I once was, right? You're on the ground. You're right there out. I ain't as good. They're carrying you out like a stretcher. You're giving the thumbs up. The whole crowd's cheering. That would be the coolest moment of your life. So you just got to hit the marks there.
Oh, well. I don't wish that would have happened, but that's the play. Oh, that would have felt a little too staged, but man, a seamless transition that could have been. Oh well, maybe next time.
Yes, and in the vein of guys we missed out on, gotta shout out our guy, the tiny raccoon, Jimothy. I know we're a couple weeks past the discourse there, but what an absolute lad. There have been all these like tracings of Jimothy where they found his dad, they found his siblings. As an online veteran, I'm a little scared. Have you ever heard of the phrase milkshake duck?
You know I haven't. Why do you ask me that?
So milkshake duck is like we love this guy. It's like Freddie, we love this guy, or the soccer guy. We love this guy. He's awesome. And then someone like finds an old tweet and they're like, actually, we found out milkshake duck is like in a cult. And then we all hate him. I'm scared of what, like, if people are going to start like overfeeding Jimothy or something. But as of right now, it's a really pure online moment. So I love that. And I wanted to do a baseball related one. And this is not me blowing smoke, but I was like writing down, okay, who are the best homegrown guys in baseball? We got Pete Crow Armstrong for not demanding $500 million and requesting a trade. I feel like that's exactly, I think baseball's headed for a lot, guys. I could have just as easily gone for the Japanese or Korean Baseball Association, which we'll probably be watching in the offseason for a couple of years here. But yeah, it's our unite again. It's our uniting against the Dodgers. I feel like we're at this point where, like I've gotten more and more into baseball the last couple of years. And it feels good, like, to root for these homegrown players and these rosters that are kind of built the right way, even on bigger teams. But then you see the Dodgers kind of assembling the Avengers, and you're like, man, this is pretty rough. And this feels very much like soccer or F1, where we need to have some kind of a cap here.
Technically, PCA was traded from the Mets, just in case that wasn't enough for the Mets to digest.
Well, that's an American hero right now. He escaped the Mets oppression and ended up, coming on a real organization.
Not an American hero, probably, for saying that he questions if Babe Ruth actually existed. Tough look.
That was a bit. If people thinking that wasn't a bit, I'm lost, because he's like, would be a funny one. What if I thought that? Everyone started laughing, and then like people just assumed he was being serious.
Christian Cavallari, you mean, wasn't the person that was going to check him on that? She wasn't going to be like, wait a minute, there is footage. Maybe you just haven't seen it. It's there. He very much existed. We have firsthand accounts of people that can confirm that he existed. Yeah, look, I don't hate the Dodgers in the way that I probably should. Talk to me in late October when my team inevitably doesn't have enough firepower to beat them in a 7-game series. They did just, take care of them the first 2 games of the series so far this week. But yeah, I more so am frustrated that baseball owners that are on the opposite end of the spectrum choose to continue to be on the opposite end of the spectrum. And yeah, there probably does need to be a cap. I don't hate the Dodgers for trying to just do everything they possibly can to win. Even the deferred payment stuff, like, it's ridiculous that they have like over $1 billion in deferred payments to these guys, but they're operating within the system. It's not necessarily their fault that they continue to do these things. And like, I thought the package for Scooble was going to be much greater than it actually was, and it didn't end up being this insane thing. So, they were able to play that card, and who knows if maybe we need this in baseball. Like, maybe we need, just a constant villain, because the Yankees haven't been good enough to be a villain for 15 years. The Dodgers have certainly morphed into the villain for all those reasons, but I don't hate them in that way. Like, I don't. It's more so the Pirates of the world, and like, spend more money. That's kind of the name of the game.
Yeah. And that's the thing. This is the only topic I think ever I've struggled to find an actual lad of the week to talk about the thing that's going on in sports, right? But I would say a salary floor is my biggest number one issue. Like, I think if we could pair a cap with a floor, but the floor is, if I could have one wish, it would be, hey, if you can't afford to have a baseball team, probably don't have a baseball team, And I think that's what's getting lost in all this is, like, on the top end, you have like 15 Scott Boras clients who, yeah, their earnings would be docked. But I think on the other end, it would create so much more wealth for the laborer and the working class of baseball to just say, no, A's owner, no, Rays owner, you got to spend more money, dog.
Yeah, what a concept. But making too much of a profit, and they don't feel like they have to, which sucks. But yeah, baseball definitely heading for a lockout. More emphasis than ever to win a World Series this year. Definitely feels like that. I want to get us out here with an email. Got an email from our guy, Tyler. Speaking of Chris Cavallari, we're going to get to something in a second here. Okay. Tyler says, and by the way, email us, theogkickoff@gmail.com. Would love to be able to hear from you. Thoughts on this episode, thoughts on us, thoughts on anything. Let us know. Tyler said, you guys are getting me extremely excited for the 2026 season college football with all the SEC coverage at media days. As sad as I was to hear that you left SDS, different verb than I would have used, but that's okay. It's clearly evident that the quality of product you produce is still top notch with the OG kickoff. The games, drafts, predictions you do are amazing. Fun to see how they play out by the end of the year. The interviews you do with all the SEC coaches and other analysts are fantastic. I listened to Josh Pate and others you've interviewed, so it's great to see a crossover. I love the crossover editions of Locked On SEC podcast for the same reason. Shout out our guy Chris Gordy, of course. Speaking of karaoke, Connor, It's hilarious you mentioned the Jay Cutler don't care story. I'm originally from St. Petersburg, Florida, before moving to Nashville. Both cities have experienced a huge boom in residents in the past decade plus. I have a hat from St. Pete that says, "Thank you for not moving here," which is meant for Florida, but works in Tennessee as well. Whenever I wear it in Nashville, locals love it and ask me where I got it. Shout out to my high school buddy's company, blah, 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 vaintlocal.com. Thanks for that. Free shout out, whatever. I saw Jay Cutler out in Franklin one day at a restaurant having lunch. He lives nearby, about 25 minutes west, so not necessarily a surprise. I was wearing that hat and hoped he saw it and said he liked it, so I could have replied, "Don't care," loudly in a sarcastic, funny moment. Unfortunately, the interaction didn't happen, but definitely could happen in the future. Not that you and Will need another reason to visit Nashville, but all this talk about food on the pod, maybe want to mention that there is a Culver's 13 minutes from my house, and an In-N-Out just moved its headquarters 8 minutes away. Wow. I have not had In-N-Out in my life. Don't know why. Been to California. It just didn't happen. Didn't happen. I was there for a week. Didn't happen. Don't know why. Keep up the great work as always. Hit me up when you visit for a tour of all that Nashville has to offer from Tyler. Thank you, Tyler, for confirming the Jay Cutler don't care thing is real. I did not make that up. I'm still saying it often. Even when we had the ruling on Friday night, SEC and Big Ten, protect college sports. Don't care. Don't care.
Tell me who is eligible and how they're eligible. That's all I care about. Yeah.
How many yards did he have after first contact?
There you go. Now we're talking analytics, Connor.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean, as it relates to Nashville, I'm probably part of the problem there. If you want to move into Nashville, get yourself a signature home. But I am actually going there in 2 weeks for our little summit up there. It's a beautiful place. Really excited to see Nashville. And honestly, it's a credit to our team up there that I haven't been there a ton because they're really like ahead of schedule. They're crushing it in our Nashville kind of division. And so I've told them, like, you guys are doing such a good job. I just ended up going to Birmingham. And so, yeah, shout out Nashville again. Like, I've been a couple of times. I love it out there. It's one of the few cities I could see myself relocating to. I'm sorry, but it's a beautiful place. And when you live somewhere that is awesome, people tend to move there. I saw that with Atlanta. I think that boom is more or less over, but yeah, it's a really, really great spot. And I couldn't be more thrilled to be slightly associated with it.
We had SEC Media Days in Nashville next year. Just saying. Hot chicken all week. Not all week. That'd be tough. Heartburn's real. We don't disrespect heartburn. We never do. But Prince's, Hattie B's, there are more authentic local ones. I get that. I understand. But yeah, full tour of all that Nashville has to offer, courtesy of Tyler. Thank you for emailing us. Like I said, the ogkickoff@gmail.com. Caffeine? What are we doing with caffeine? Get ready for the season. We got to have our caffeine routine locked in right now. This is not the time to necessarily be tinkering or like, I'm taking like a 3-week break from caffeine. No. Lock in. Let us know. We'd love to be able to hear from you. If you participated in any of our live shows that we had at SEC Media Days in Tampa, thank you for following along. It's really fun to be able to do that every day that we were there. A lot of great stuff that came out from that. Follow along with all of our content on social. Will's been cranking out graphics and videos and stuff like that we had from our 4 days in Tampa. So check that out. Leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to the next round on YouTube. Subscribe to the OG Kickoff on YouTube as well. Follow us on Twitter @TJ O'Gara, @GoSoHard, @the OG Kickoff. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.